My name is Isaiah Brooks, and the day I lost everything started with applause. Not sympathy, not concern, applause. The judge had barely left the courtroom when Monica's attorney, Preston Vale, shook her hand and smiled like he'd just won a championship. Maybe he had. 11 years of marriage reduced to signatures and legal language. The house was hers. The investment account was hers. The clinic I had spent 6 years building was hers. Even the medical equipment I'd personally purchased through loans and overtime shifts was included in the settlement. By the time the paperwork settled, I owned less at 41 than I had owned at 22. The only thing Preston hadn't managed to take was Zoe. My daughter sat quietly beside me on the courtroom bench, clutching a worn paperback novel to her chest. She was 11 years old and far too observant for her own good. Children notice things adults think they're hiding. They notice the tension in your shoulders, the hesitation before you answer a question, the way your smile arrives half a second too late. Zoe noticed all of it. As we walked toward the courthouse doors, she slipped her hand into mine. "Dad? Yeah? Are we still okay?" The question nearly stopped my heart. Not because I didn't have an answer, because I wasn't sure if I believed the answer myself. "We're still okay." She studied my face for a moment, measuring, evaluating. Then she nodded. Somehow that made me feel worse, because children should not have to decide whether their parents are telling the truth. Outside, Monica stood on the courthouse steps with Preston beside her. The smile on her face wasn't relief. It wasn't sadness. It was victory. The expression of someone who believed the difficult part was finally over. Maybe for her it was. For me, it felt like the beginning of something much worse. I reached into my pocket for my car keys and remembered I didn't own the car anymore. That had been awarded to Monica 3 weeks earlier under temporary orders. Small detail. Big humiliation. So instead, I picked up the single duffel bag containing everything I still possessed and started walking. One bag, one daughter, one apartment lease that started next week. That was the sum total of my life. Then I heard it. At first it sounded like distant thunder. Deep, rhythmic, growing louder by the second. Everyone on the courthouse steps looked up. Phones appeared instantly. Conversations stopped. A black helicopter descended from the clouds, its rotor wash scattering loose papers across the lawn. The side of the aircraft carried silver lettering. Sterling Life Flight. The helicopter touched down directly on the courthouse grass. Not nearby. Not across the street. Directly in front of the building. People started recording immediately. Monica stopped smiling. Preston stopped smiling too. The door opened. A woman stepped out wearing a charcoal suit and the kind of expression people develop after spending decades making decisions that affect thousands of lives. She walked straight toward me, past reporters, past attorneys, past everyone. Then she stopped 2 feet away. "Dr. Isaiah Brooks?" Nobody had called me doctor in 4 years. The word hit harder than it should have. "You have the wrong person." "No," she said calmly. "I really don't." Behind her, the helicopter blades continued spinning. The entire courthouse seemed frozen. Cameras pointed at us from every angle. "I'm Camille Sterling." Of course she was. Everyone knew who Camille Sterling was. CEO of Sterling Medical Group. Hospitals in 14 states. Emergency transport networks. Rehabilitation centers. The kind of billionaire whose name appeared on buildings. Okay. Brilliant response. Really impressive. Camille ignored my awkwardness completely. "I need you." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. "You need me?" "Yes." Another pause. "And I need you to start today." Monica took a step forward. "Excuse me?" Camille didn't even look at her, which somehow felt more insulting than if she had. "Dr. Brooks, 11 people died last year." My smile disappeared immediately. "What?" "During medical transport." Another pause. "And I think the people trying to fix the problem are solving the wrong one." Silence settled over the courthouse steps. Camille looked directly into my eyes. "I've spent 6 months reviewing every case." Another pause. "And your name keeps appearing." My stomach tightened, because there was only one reason my name appeared in medical investigations. One reason everyone in healthcare still remembered Isaiah Brooks, Gerald Foss, Meridian Medical Center. The patient who died on my operating table 9 years earlier. The mistake that ended my career. The mistake that destroyed everything. Camille seemed to read the thought immediately. I don't believe the report. The world stopped. Not figuratively. Literally. For a second I couldn't hear the helicopter, couldn't hear the crowd, couldn't hear anything. What? My voice barely worked. Camille folded her hands. The official report says you ignored protocol. Another pause. The evidence says something else. Behind me, Monica's expression changed. For the first time all day, she looked nervous. Preston looked worse. Much worse. Not surprised, not confused. Concerned. The difference mattered. A lot. Camille noticed it too. I could tell by the brief glance she gave him. Then she returned her attention to me. Come with me. Why? Because if I'm right. Another pause. Someone destroyed your career. The courthouse lawn fell completely silent. Even the reporters stopped talking. Because suddenly this wasn't about a billionaire arriving in a helicopter. It was about something much bigger. Something buried for nearly a decade. Something dangerous enough that a woman like Camille Sterling had flown across the state to find me personally. Zoe squeezed my hand tighter. Dad? I looked down at her, then back at the helicopter, then at Camille Sterling. For 9 years I'd lived with a question. One question. Had I really killed a man, or had someone wanted me to believe I had? And standing there with everything already taken from me, I realized something important. I had nothing left to lose. Okay, I said. Camille nodded once. Good. Then she looked toward the helicopter. Because if what I found is real, somebody is about to become very interested in whether you stay silent. And for the first time that day, I noticed the black SUV parked across the street. The driver was watching us. Not the helicopter. Not Camille. Me. The moment our eyes met, he reached for his phone. The man in the SUV made the call the second our eyes met. He didn't try to hide it, didn't look away, didn't pretend to be checking directions. He simply lifted the phone to his ear and started speaking. That bothered me more than if he'd tried to be discreet. Professional surveillance is careful. Confident surveillance doesn't need to be. Problem? Camille asked quietly. I nodded toward the vehicle. Maybe. She glanced once, then turned back toward the helicopter. Her expression didn't change, which told me she had noticed something long before I did. Get Zoe inside. That was all she said. Not don't worry. Not it's nothing. Just get Zoe inside. My stomach tightened immediately. Zoe looked between us. What's happening? Nothing, I lied. We're taking a helicopter ride. People don't usually lie while saying helicopter ride. Smart kid. Unfortunate timing. Camille almost smiled. Your daughter is observant. Constantly. The helicopter crew helped us aboard. The moment the doors closed, the noise outside disappeared. Not entirely. Just enough to make conversation possible. Zoe pressed her face against the window, excitement temporarily overpowering concern. Children are wonderfully adaptable that way. Meanwhile, I sat across from Camille trying to process the last 10 minutes. 4 hours earlier, I was a divorced physician with a duffel bag and no future. Now I was sitting in a medical helicopter beside one of the most powerful women in healthcare. Life makes very little sense sometimes. Camille opened a folder. Thick. Organized. Color-coded. The kind of folder prepared by people who expect lawsuits. Start here. She slid several pages toward me. I looked down. My breath caught immediately. Gerald Foss. The name sat at the top of the document. 9 years vanished in an instant. The operating room. The blood. The alarms. The impossible decisions. The death certificate. Every nightmare I'd spent nearly a decade trying to bury came roaring back. Where did you get this? Independent audit. Another pause. 3 months ago. I stared at the pages. Medical logs. Medication records. Internal communications. Some I'd seen before. Others I'd never laid eyes on. Then I noticed something. A timestamp. My heartbeat accelerated. This isn't right. Camille nodded. I know. Another pause. Keep reading. So I did. 10 minutes later, I felt physically ill. Not because of what the documents contained, because of what they didn't. Critical entries were missing. Medication records appeared altered. Notes had been edited after the patient's death. Tiny discrepancies individually. Massive discrepancies together. Somebody changed this. Camille folded her hands. That's my conclusion. Zoe looked over from the window. Dad? I forced a smile. Everything okay? She studied my face. Again. Always studying. Then nodded slowly and returned to watching the clouds. I waited until she looked away before turning back toward Camille. Why now? Silence followed. Then Camille reached into the folder and removed another document. This one wasn't from Meridian. It was recent. Very recent. Sterling Life Flight. Internal Incident Report. 11 patients died during transport over the last 2 years. I frowned. You said that before. She nodded. What I didn't say is that 3 separate investigations concluded there was no identifiable cause. Another pause. No mechanical failures. No negligent staff. No obvious protocol errors. I looked at the report. Then another. Then another. A pattern slowly emerged. Small inconsistencies. Documentation problems. Medication discrepancies. Tiny things. Familiar things. Horribly familiar things. My stomach dropped. No. Camille watched me carefully. You see it. This can't be happening again. But it was. The same fingerprints. Different system. Different decade. Same method. Records altered after outcomes were known. Documentation changing to support conclusions that already existed. Somebody wasn't investigating failures. Somebody was manufacturing explanations. The realization hit like a freight train. Because if I was right, 11 deaths weren't just tragic. They were evidence. Evidence of something much larger. Much uglier. Much more dangerous. The helicopter touched down 20 minutes later at Sterling Life Flight Operations Center. A massive complex spread across hundreds of acres. Helicopter pads, training facilities, emergency response hangars. Enough equipment to support a small military operation. The moment we stepped out, a tall man approached. Mid-40s. Former athlete build. Permanent expression of skepticism. Miss Sterling. Camille nodded. Russell, his eyes moved to me. Immediate disapproval, not subtle, not hidden, direct. This is him? Wonderful. Already making friends. This is Dr. Brooks, Camille said. Russell extended a hand, barely. Russell Grant, nice to meet you. We'll see. Ah, one of those. Inside the operations center, Russell wasted absolutely no time. With respect, Camille, this is a mistake. Good start. Russell, no. He turned toward me. A surgeon who surrendered his license after a patient died is your answer? The room became very quiet. Zoe looked up immediately. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Familiarity. I'd seen that look before. Heard that tone before. Judgment is remarkably consistent across professions. Camille's voice hardened. Careful. Russell didn't back down. Am I wrong? Silence followed. Then I answered before Camille could. Maybe. Russell blinked. Apparently that wasn't the response he expected. Maybe? I nodded. Either I'm exactly who you think I am, another pause, or someone spent 9 years making sure I looked that way. Complete silence. Russell stared at me for several seconds, then crossed his arms. And which is it? Good question. Maybe the most important question in the entire story. I looked through the operations center windows toward the helicopters sitting outside, then back at him. That's what I'm here to find out. What none of us realized was that the man in the black SUV had already arrived. He wasn't outside anymore. He was inside the building, watching from the second floor. And in his pocket sat a flash drive containing information that could destroy me a second time. This time permanently. The man on the second floor watched us for exactly 43 seconds before disappearing behind a glass office wall. I only noticed him because years in medicine teach you something unusual. People under pressure develop tunnel vision. People hiding something watch exits. This man wasn't looking at helicopters. He wasn't looking at Camille Sterling. He was watching me. The moment I looked up, he turned away. My instincts immediately started screaming. Unfortunately, I had spent 9 years learning not to trust my instincts. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Russell said. "Maybe I have." He followed my gaze toward the second floor. Empty now. Whoever the man was, he knew when to disappear. Russell frowned. "What?" "Nothing." I wasn't ready to explain paranoia to people who already doubted my presence. Camille noticed anyway. She noticed everything. "Show him the incident files." Russell looked unhappy about that, which meant they were probably important. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in a secure conference room surrounded by reports from 11 separate patient deaths, 11 families, 11 tragedies, 11 investigations that somehow concluded nobody was responsible. I hated cases like this, not because they were complicated, because they were designed to be complicated. Real accidents leave obvious fingerprints. Cover-ups leave confusion, and confusion is much harder to prosecute. Russell pushed a stack of reports toward me. "Go ahead." The challenge in his voice was obvious. "Fine." I started reading. The first report involved a 62-year-old cardiac patient transferred between facilities. The second involved a trauma victim. The third, a pediatric emergency. Different ages, different diagnoses, different locations. On the surface, no connection whatsoever. Yet by the fourth report, I found it. A medication adjustment entered after the transport ended. Tiny discrepancy, easy to miss. By the sixth report, I found another, and another, and another. Every single case contained modified documentation, not dramatic changes, just enough to redirect attention, just enough to support conclusions that protected someone. My heartbeat accelerated, because I'd seen this exact pattern before. 9 years ago, Gerald Foss, Meridian Medical Center, the same invisible fingerprints. The same manipulation, the same strategy. Russell noticed my expression change. "What?" I looked up slowly. "These aren't 11 investigations." Silence followed. "They're 11 cover stories." The room went completely still. Camille leaned forward immediately. "Explain." I slid 3 files across the table. "Look here. Another. And here. Another. And here." Russell frowned. "Documentation? Revisions?" "After the outcomes." Another pause. "Always after the outcomes." I pointed toward a medication log. "Nobody investigates what happened." Another pause. "They investigate what explanation protects the system." Silence. Russell's skepticism began cracking. Just a little. Then the conference room door opened. A woman entered carrying coffee. Early 30s. Blonde hair. Hospital administrator badge. Professional smile. The moment she saw the files spread across the table, something flashed across her face. Fear. Gone instantly. But not fast enough. I noticed. Camille noticed too. The woman placed the coffee tray down carefully. "Anything else?" Camille watched her. "No." The administrator nodded and left. Nobody spoke until the door closed. Then Camille asked quietly, "You saw that?" I nodded. Russell frowned. "Saw what?" She recognized the files. Another pause, and she wasn't happy about it. Russell looked unconvinced. Camille didn't. "Get me her personnel records." Russell hesitated. "Camille now." He left without another word. The moment the door shut, Camille turned toward me. "How certain are you?" I laughed softly. No humor in it. "About what?" "That somebody is altering records." I looked down at the files. 11 dead patients. 11 investigations. 11 families who believed they had answers, certain enough to bet my life on it. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, because I'd already lost my career betting against manipulated records once before. An hour later, Russell returned looking pale. "That's never a good sign." He tossed a folder onto the table. "You need to see this." Camille opened it first. Her expression hardened instantly. "What?" I asked. She slid the file toward me. Personnel history, administrative credentials, employment records. My stomach dropped the second I saw the name. Lena Voss. Not because I knew her, because I knew her last name. Gerald Foss. The patient whose death destroyed my life. The patient from 9 years ago. The patient at the center of everything. Russell stared at me. Coincidence? No, not even remotely. Gerald Foss had a daughter who now worked inside Sterling Life Flight's Administrative Review Department, a daughter with access to incident reports, documentation systems, internal investigations. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Camille leaned back slowly. Somebody put her here. Silence followed. Then I saw something buried in the employment history. A signature. Not Lena's. An executive approval authorization. My pulse stopped, because I recognized the name immediately. Preston Vale. The same attorney who represented Monica during my divorce. The same attorney who smiled while my life collapsed yesterday morning. The same attorney standing beside my ex-wife on the courthouse steps. The room went dead silent. Russell looked confused. Camille looked dangerous. You know him. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Slowly. Very well. For the first time since arriving, genuine fear appeared in Camille Sterling's eyes. Not fear for herself. Fear for the size of what we had just uncovered. Because suddenly this wasn't about 11 patients, or one surgeon, or a single investigation. Somehow, impossibly, the man who helped destroy my marriage had just appeared inside a medical conspiracy, stretching back nearly a decade. And if Preston Vale was involved, then what happened to my career might never have been an accident at all. What none of us knew was that at that exact moment, Preston was sitting in a penthouse office 50 miles away, watching security footage of our conference room, and smiling. Because we had just discovered exactly what he wanted us to discover. Preston Vale was smiling because he wanted us looking backward. Smart criminals understand something most people don't. If you can control where investigators focus, you can hide what matters directly in front of them. While we obsessed over a 9-year-old medical case, something much larger was already moving. We just didn't know it yet. Back at Sterling Life Flight, Camille closed the folder and stared out the conference room window. How deep? She asked quietly. Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Russell finally broke the silence. Maybe this is coincidence. I looked at him. He immediately realized how ridiculous that sounded. Okay, he admitted. Probably not coincidence. Better, much better. Camille stood. Locked down every incident report from the last 5 years. Russell nodded. Done. Every personnel file connected to review committees. Done. And nobody leaves this building with a flash drive, laptop, or document until we understand what's happening. Russell didn't move. Camille, her eyes narrowed. What? If we're right. He hesitated. This could involve senior executives. Silence followed. Maybe even board members. The room went cold. Because that's the point where investigations stop being uncomfortable and start becoming dangerous. Camille folded her arms. Then I guess they'll have to be uncomfortable. 20 minutes later, I found Zoe sitting in a break room eating cookies with 3 helicopter pilots. Somehow she had convinced grown adults to explain aviation fuel systems using crayons. Children are terrifyingly effective negotiators. Dad, she waved excitedly, then noticed my face. Her smile faded immediately. Uh-oh. What? You made the detective face. I blinked. The what? The detective face. Another pause. The one from mystery movies. Wonderful. Apparently my emotional state now had categories. I sat beside her. How much of that cookie have you eaten? Enough. Not an answer. Definitely my daughter. Before I could argue, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Again. Normally I'd ignore it. After the last 48 hours, ignoring things seemed irresponsible. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Slow, deliberate, controlled. Every hair on my neck stood up. Hello? More silence. Then a man's voice. You should have stayed divorced. The line went dead. Just like that. No explanation, no threat, no demand. Yet my stomach instantly dropped. Because random people don't make calls like that. Random people don't know you're divorced. Random people don't care. Zoe noticed immediately. Dad? I forced a smile. Everything's fine. She rolled her eyes. 11 years old and already unconvinced by adults. A dangerous combination. Upstairs, things were getting worse. Much worse. By late afternoon, Russell's team had discovered something alarming. 43 employee files had been modified within the last 6 months. Not updated. Modified. Different thing entirely. Access records disappeared. Authorization logs changed. Internal communications missing. Someone wasn't cleaning up one mistake. Someone was systematically rewriting history. Camille stared at the report in disbelief. 43? Russell nodded grimly. And that's just what we've found. Another pause. Somebody's been inside our systems for years. Suddenly, the room's screens went black. Every screen. Every monitor. Every display wall. Instantly. The conference room lights flickered once. Twice. Then stabilized. Nobody spoke. Then a single image appeared on the main display. A photograph. Gerald Foss. My patient. The man whose death destroyed my career. My blood turned to ice. The image remained for 3 seconds, then changed. Another photograph. One of the 11 transport victims. Then another. 11 faces. 11 dead patients. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the projector. Finally, text appeared. Large white letters against a black background. Ask why they really died. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the screen went dark. Complete darkness. Russell immediately grabbed his phone. Security. Camille remained perfectly still. Too still. That wasn't a hack. Russell looked at her. What? That was a message. Another pause. Somebody inside this building wants us looking. The realization hit everyone at the same time. We weren't chasing the truth anymore. The truth was chasing us. 30 minutes later, security finished reviewing footage. Nobody had entered the conference room systems. Nobody had accessed the display network externally, which left only one possibility. Internal access. Someone with high-level credentials. Someone close. Someone trusted. That's when Russell received another report. He read it once, then again, then looked at Camille. We have a problem. Camille didn't even flinch. Another one? Russell swallowed. Preston Vale. My pulse jumped instantly. What about him? Russell tossed a printed document onto the table. Corporate legal contracts. Consulting agreements. Payment authorizations. My stomach sank. Preston wasn't just connected. He wasn't just involved. For the last 7 years, he had been Sterling Medical Group's outside legal advisor. The room exploded. Everyone started talking at once. Camille slammed her hand against the table. Silence returned instantly. She looked at the paperwork, then at me, then at Russell. How did nobody know this? Russell laughed once. No humor. Because somebody buried it. Another pause. Deep. The pieces finally started connecting. Too many pieces. My divorce. My destroyed medical license. Gerald Foss. Lena Voss. The altered investigations. Preston Vale. None of these were separate events. Somehow they were connected. Somehow they always had been. Then Camille's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and immediately frowned. What? Russell asked. Camille answered the call, listened, said nothing, then slowly lowered the phone. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked shaken. Genuinely shaken. Camille? She looked directly at me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Your apartment. My stomach dropped. What about it? Silence. Then the words. Somebody set it on fire. Everything stopped. The room vanished. The sounds disappeared. The air left my lungs. What? Another pause. 10 minutes ago. Zoe looked up from across the room, confused, afraid. I couldn't even process the information, because there was only one thing in that apartment that mattered. Not furniture, not clothes, not possessions, evidence. The original medical journals I'd kept hidden for 9 years. Handwritten notes from the night Gerald Foss died. Notes nobody else knew existed. Notes that could prove whether I was innocent or guilty. And now, they were burning. I don't remember standing up. 1 second I was sitting at the conference table. The next I was moving toward the door so fast my chair crashed into the wall behind me. Dad! Zoe's voice cut through the panic instantly. I stopped. Barely, because no matter what was happening, I wasn't leaving my daughter behind. Not now. Not ever again. Camille was already on her feet. Get the car. Russell didn't hesitate. He was gone before she finished speaking. The room exploded into motion. Phones, security personnel, emergency response teams, Yet everything felt distant, muted, unreal, because all I could think about were the journals. 9 years of silence, 9 years of guilt, 9 years of wondering whether I was crazy for keeping them. Every note, every observation, every detail from the night Gerald Foss died. I'd hidden them because something never felt right, because every official report contradicted things I remembered seeing with my own eyes. Those journals were the only proof that my memory hadn't betrayed me. And now they were burning. Zoe grabbed my hand. "Dad." I looked down. Her face was pale. "Are we okay?" There was that question again. The same question from the courthouse. The same question every child asks when the world starts shaking beneath their feet. I swallowed hard. "We're okay." She studied me, then nodded. Somehow she always chose to believe me, even when I didn't believe myself. 20 minutes later, we arrived at the apartment complex, or what remained of it. Fire trucks lined the street. Emergency lights painted everything red and blue. Smoke drifted into the evening sky. Residents stood behind police barriers wrapped in blankets. Some cried. Some stared. Some simply looked lost. I understood that look. Russell parked before the car fully stopped. I was out the door instantly. A firefighter intercepted me before I reached the building. "Sir, you can't go in there." "Apartment 3B. My voice sounded strange, distant. "I need to get inside." The firefighter shook his head. "Nobody is going inside." Another pause. "Not tonight." I looked past him. The entire third floor was blackened, destroyed, gone. My apartment, my temporary home, my evidence, my past, all of it. Then a voice called my name. "Dr. Brooks." I turned. A police detective approached. Mid-50s, weathered face, tired eyes. The kind of man who had spent decades seeing humanity at its worst. "Detective Harlan." He extended a hand. I barely noticed. Was anyone hurt? No fatalities. Relief hit first, then suspicion. Cause. Harlan hesitated. "Just for a second. Long enough. We're investigating." Bad answer. Very bad answer. I stared at him. "What aren't you telling me?" Silence followed. Then he lowered his voice. "Your apartment was the point of origin." My stomach dropped. "What?" "The fire started inside your unit." Another pause. "Specifically, in your office." The blood drained from my face. Because my office contained exactly one thing worth targeting. "The journals," Harlan continued. "You have enemies, doctor?" I laughed. Short. Bitter, apparently. Before he could respond, another firefighter approached carrying a clear evidence bag. Inside sat something blackened and partially melted. At first I didn't recognize it. Then I did. My old fireproof document case. The one holding the journals, or what was left of them. My knees nearly gave out. 9 years. Gone. Just like that. Harlan watched my reaction carefully. Important? I couldn't answer. Camille stepped beside me. Very. The detective nodded slowly, then asked the question that changed everything. Were copies made? Silence. Complete silence. I stared at the evidence bag, then at Camille, then back at the detective. Because I'd never considered that possibility. Never needed to. The journals were safe. Hidden. Protected. Except apparently they weren't. No. Harlan frowned. That's unfortunate. He wasn't wrong. 30 minutes later, after statements were taken and reports filed, Zoe sat wrapped in a blanket inside a command vehicle. Exhausted, frightened, trying very hard not to show it. Camille sat beside her, talking quietly, keeping her distracted, keeping her calm. Watching them together, I felt something unexpected. Anger. Not grief, not fear. Anger. Real anger. Because somebody had crossed a line. Destroying my career was one thing. Destroying my apartment was another. But my daughter was standing outside a burning building because somebody wanted evidence destroyed. That was different. That was personal. Russell appeared beside me. "You need to see this." His expression told me I wasn't going to like it. We walked toward his SUV. He handed me a tablet. Security footage. Grainy. Dark. Time-stamped less than an hour before the fire. A man entered my apartment building carrying a maintenance bag. Baseball cap. sunglasses. Average height, average build, the kind of face designed to be forgotten. Then he looked directly into the camera. Just for a second. Long enough. My heart stopped. No way. Russell looked grim. You know him. I nodded slowly. That's impossible. Yet it wasn't, because I recognized him immediately. Dr. Nathan Mercer, the physician who testified against me 9 years ago, the physician whose testimony convinced the medical board to revoke my license, the physician who swore under oath that I ignored protocol and caused Gerald Foss's death, the physician who vanished from public practice 6 months later. Everyone thought he'd retired. Everyone thought he'd disappeared. Apparently everyone was wrong. Russell stared at the screen. You sure? Positive. Silence followed. Then Camille spoke from behind us. Then we finally know 2 things. I turned toward her. Her expression was colder than I'd ever seen. Dangerous, focused, determined. What's that? Camille looked at the burning remains of my apartment. Then back at the tablet. First. Another pause. You were never the real target. My stomach tightened. And second? Her eyes narrowed. Nathan Mercer is terrified of something. The night air suddenly felt colder. Because she was right. People don't burn down apartments over old mistakes. They burn down apartments when they're afraid old mistakes are about to be exposed. And if Nathan Mercer was willing to commit arson to destroy 9-year-old journals, then whatever those journals contained had to be far more dangerous than any of us realized. What none of us knew was that the journals hadn't been destroyed. Not completely. Because 3 weeks before the divorce, I'd done something I barely remembered doing. Something small. Something insignificant. Something that would soon put a target on every one of our backs. 3 weeks before the divorce, I had been sitting alone in my office at Meridian Medical Center's abandoned outpatient building. The place was scheduled for demolition. Most of the furniture had already been removed. Dust covered everything. Broken blinds rattled against the windows whenever the wind picked up. I was there for one reason only. Closure. Or at least that was what I told myself. The truth was uglier. I wanted to see the room where my life ended. 9 years hadn't been enough to stop wondering. 9 years hadn't been enough to stop replaying every second of Gerald Foss's death. So I went back. The office had been empty for years. Nobody cared what happened inside it anymore. Nobody except me. While sorting through old boxes, I found something strange. A maintenance access panel hidden behind a filing cabinet. Not unusual by itself. Hospitals are full of hidden compartments, wiring channels, and maintenance spaces. What was unusual was what I found inside. A small metal lockbox. No label, no inventory sticker, no reason to exist. At the time, curiosity won. I forced it open. Inside sat several flash drives and a stack of backup disks. Most people would have thrown them away. I almost did. Then I noticed the dates. Gerald Foss. The night he died. Every file was labeled with timestamps from that week. Everyone. Something felt wrong. So I took them home. That's all. No grand plan, no investigation. I simply took them home because the box shouldn't have existed. A week later, while preparing for the divorce hearings, I remembered the lockbox. I still wasn't sure why. Maybe instinct, maybe paranoia, maybe 9 years of unanswered questions. Whatever the reason, I copied everything onto a secure cloud account under an old email address nobody knew existed. Then I forgot about it. Until now, standing outside my burned apartment, the memory slammed into me like a freight train. Oh my God. Camille looked up immediately. What? My pulse accelerated. The backups. Russell frowned. What backups? I explained everything. The lockbox, the flash drives, the cloud storage, every detail. By the time I finished, nobody was speaking. Finally, Russell laughed. Once. Hard. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I was. Camille's eyes narrowed. Not in frustration. In focus. Can you access it? Maybe. Another pause. If the account still exists. Russell immediately pulled out his phone. We're not doing this here. He was right. If Nathan Mercer had burned down my apartment over physical journals, then digital evidence would be worth killing for. The realization made me physically ill. Zoe appeared beside us before I could say anything else. She looked exhausted. Smoke still lingered in her hair. Can we go? Her voice was small, smaller than usual. My heart broke instantly, because no matter how big the conspiracy became, my daughter had still lost her home tonight. Yeah, sweetheart. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Let's go. An hour later, we arrived at a secure executive residence owned by Sterling Medical Group. Calling it a house felt dishonest. The place looked more like a private fortress. Security gates, cameras, controlled access points, people with earpieces pretending not to watch everyone. Russell approved immediately. Good? Good? I asked. He nodded toward the security perimeter. If somebody wants you tonight, they're going to need an army. That wasn't reassuring. Upstairs, after Zoe finally fell asleep, we gathered in a private study overlooking the city. Camille stood beside the fireplace. Russell monitored security feeds. I sat in front of a laptop trying to remember an email password from 3 weeks ago. The fate of my future apparently depended on my ability to remember old passwords. Wonderful. Anything? Camille asked. Maybe. I typed again. Error. Wrong password. Again. Error. Again. Error. Russell sighed dramatically. You're killing me. I'm aware. Another attempt. Then suddenly the screen changed. Inbox loaded. Cloud account connected. Access granted. The room went silent. Every sound disappeared. Because after 9 years, we were finally standing at the edge of the truth. I opened the storage folder. Hundreds of files appeared. Videos, internal emails, audio recordings, system backups, administrative logs. Far more information than I expected. Far more. My stomach tightened immediately. This isn't a backup. Camille stepped closer. What is it? I clicked one folder. Then another. Then another. Realization hit instantly. This is surveillance. Silence followed. Surveillance of who? Russell asked. I opened the first video. Grainy security footage appeared. Hospital corridor. Night shift. Timestamp. 9 years ago. Then a familiar figure entered the frame. Nathan Mercer. The room went cold. Mercer looked younger, thinner, nervous. He checked both directions before unlocking a restricted records room. Then he disappeared inside. 27 minutes later, he emerged carrying patient files. Gerald Foss's files. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then another figure entered the frame. A second person. My breath stopped, because I recognized him immediately. Preston Vale, 9 years younger, same expensive suit, same arrogant posture, same face. The room exploded. Russell stood so fast his chair crashed backward. Camille stared at the screen. No, I couldn't breathe, because suddenly everything connected. The divorce, the investigations, the altered reports, the apartment fire, all of it. Preston Vale wasn't helping cover up the conspiracy. Preston Vale was there at the beginning. Then the video changed. Nathan handed Preston a folder. Preston opened it, smiled, and said 6 words that changed everything. The security camera had no audio, but someone had uploaded a synchronized microphone recording. The words came through perfectly, crystal clear. Make sure Brooks takes the fall. Silence, absolute silence, the kind that arrives after a bomb explodes. My entire world tilted sideways. 9 years. 9 years of guilt. 9 years of shame. 9 years of believing maybe I deserved what happened. Gone. In 6 words. Tears blurred my vision before I realized they were there. Camille didn't look away from the screen. Neither did Russell. Because we all understood the same thing at the same moment. I hadn't lost my career because of a mistake. I had lost it because somebody needed a scapegoat. And now we had proof. What we didn't know was that while we watched the video, someone else was watching us. Hundreds of miles away, Preston Vale sat in a private jet staring at a live feed from a hidden camera inside the study, and for the first time in 9 years, he looked scared. Fear changes people. Most people imagine fear makes you run. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it makes you hide. But the truly dangerous people, the ones who have spent years protecting secrets, fear makes them reckless. And Preston Vale had just become very reckless. We didn't know it yet. All we knew was that the impossible had happened. After 9 years, We finally had proof. Real proof. Video evidence, audio recordings, documentation. The kind of evidence lawyers dream about and criminals fear. I sat staring at the screen long after the video ended. Nathan Mercer handing over Gerald Foss's file, Preston standing beside him, the words echoing in my head over and over again. Make sure Brooks takes the fall. 9 years. 9 years of believing I had failed. 9 years of watching former colleagues avoid eye contact. 9 years of seeing disappointment in my own reflection. Gone. Just like that, Camille quietly closed the laptop. Isaiah. I looked up. My eyes were burning. What? Her expression softened. You were right. 4 simple words. Yet somehow they hurt more than all the lies. Because being right didn't give me back 9 years. It didn't give me back my career. It didn't erase what Zoe had watched me become. Russell cleared his throat. We're not done. He was right. Very right. Because proving I was innocent and proving what actually happened were 2 different things. The video showed conspiracy. It showed manipulation. It showed intent. It didn't explain why. Why frame me? Why Gerald Foss? Why alter records for almost a decade afterward? None of it made sense. Yet, Russell reopened the folder. Keep digging. So we did. Hours passed. Midnight became 1 in the morning. Then 2. File after file. Video after video. Most were boring. Administrative records. Internal communications. Security footage. Then at 2:17 a.m., everything changed. Camille opened a folder labeled Project Atlas. The name meant nothing. At first, inside sat dozens of encrypted documents. Financial records, executive communications, transfer authorizations, confidential agreements. Russell frowned immediately. Atlas? I clicked the first file. Then froze. No. Camille looked over my shoulder. Her face went pale. What? I rotated the screen toward her. Patient transfer data. Thousands of entries. Hospitals. Insurance companies. Transport providers. Mortality outcomes. Cost projections. My pulse accelerated. Because this wasn't healthcare, it was accounting. Human lives converted into numbers. Russell leaned closer, then swore under his breath. They were selecting patients. Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that changes a room forever. We opened more files. Every document made things worse. Project Atlas wasn't a medical initiative. It wasn't research. It wasn't patient care. It was profit optimization. Executives identifying high-risk patients whose deaths would reduce long-term insurance liabilities. Patients unlikely to survive expensive treatments. Patients who cost systems money. Patients considered statistically expendable. My stomach turned. This can't be real. But it was. Every file proved it. Every spreadsheet. Every email. Every authorization. People weren't accidentally dying. They were being categorized, monetized, evaluated. The room felt colder with every page. Then we found Gerald Foss. His name appeared in an internal report dated 9 years earlier. Russell opened it. Nobody breathed. The report classified him as a liability. High-cost treatment. Low projected recovery. Significant financial burden. My hands started shaking. Gerald hadn't died because of a mistake. Gerald had died because somebody decided his life wasn't profitable enough. Camille covered her mouth. Russell looked physically sick. Then I saw another name, my own. Dr. Isaiah Brooks. Internal memo. Executive correspondence. I opened it. Read 3 lines. Then wished I hadn't. Brooks refuses protocol adjustment. Potential obstacle. Recommend removal following outcome event. The room exploded. Camille stood so fast her chair toppled backward. Removal? Russell grabbed the document. Read it himself. Then slammed his fist against the desk. They planned this. Nobody argued. Because the evidence was undeniable. Gerald Foss wasn't the target. I wasn't the target. We were collateral damage. Project Atlas was the target. A machine built to generate profit through manipulated medical outcomes. A machine protected by lawyers, executives, consultants, and administrators. a machine that had apparently operated for nearly a decade. Then the study lights went out. Complete darkness. Every screen died simultaneously. Every monitor, every camera feed, every system, gone. For half a second, nobody moved. Then emergency lights activated. Red, dim, disturbing. Russell reached for his phone. No signal. Camille checked hers. Nothing. Mine too. Dead. Every device, every connection, every communication channel. Silence filled the room. Then a voice echoed through the house. Calm. Artificial. Coming through the security system speakers. "Good evening, Miss Sterling." My blood turned to ice. Camille stared upward. "Who is this?" The voice ignored her question. "You should have stopped looking." Russell moved toward the door. Locked. Electronic controls unresponsive. Every exit sealed. The voice continued. "Dr. Brooks should have accepted what happened 9 years ago." Another pause. "Now people are going to get hurt." Upstairs, something crashed. Loud, violent. My heart stopped instantly. Zoe. I sprinted toward the hallway before anyone could stop me. Another crash, then a scream. My daughter's scream. The kind of scream no parent ever forgets. The kind that reaches directly into your soul and tears it apart. Zoo. I ran toward the staircase. Red emergency lights flashing around me. Security alarms suddenly activating throughout the building. Somewhere behind me, Camille was shouting orders. Russell was trying to override the locks. None of it mattered, because all I could hear was my daughter screaming. And as I reached the second floor, I saw the bedroom door hanging open. The window shattered, curtains blowing in the night wind, and Zoe was gone. There are sounds a parent never forgets: a baby's first cry, a child's laughter, the quiet breathing that tells you they're safe asleep in the next room. And then there is the other sound, the sound that freezes your blood, the sound that rewires your brain forever. Your child screaming in fear. I hit the second-floor hallway at a full sprint. The bedroom door was hanging off one hinge. Glass covered the floor. Curtains snapped violently in the wind. "Zoe!" No answer. Just silence. Terrible silence. I rushed into the room. Empty. The bed was untouched. The blanket lay crumpled beside the window. My heart hammered so hard I could barely hear. Then I saw it. A small object on the floor. Zoe's paperback novel. The same worn book she'd carried through the courthouse, through the helicopter ride, through everything. She would never leave it behind willingly. Never. My knees nearly buckled. Somebody had taken my daughter. Behind me, Camille entered the room with Russell close behind. One look at the shattered window told them everything. "No," Camille whispered. Russell immediately moved to the window. "Ground team. Now." He grabbed a radio. Nothing. Dead. The security outage wasn't an accident. It was coordinated. Every system had been disabled simultaneously. Cameras, communications, locks, alarms, all of it. Somebody had planned this. Somebody had known exactly where we would be. Then I noticed something attached to the windowsill. A small black envelope. My hands shook as I grabbed it. Inside sat a single photograph. Zoe. Taken less than an hour earlier, sleeping on the couch downstairs. Across the front, written in silver ink, were 6 words. "Delete Atlas or lose her." The room went completely silent. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process. Just 6 words. Yet somehow they carried more terror than anything I'd ever experienced. Camille read the note over my shoulder. Her face went white. Russell swore under his breath. "They're escalating." Escalating? My daughter had been kidnapped. There was no escalation left. We were already in hell. I looked at Camille. "Find her." My voice barely sounded human. "I don't care what it costs." Another pause. "Find my daughter." Camille met my eyes. And for the first time since meeting her, I saw genuine rage. Not frustration, not concern. Rage. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous rage. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. She turned toward Russell. "Activate Phoenix." Russell blinked. "Camille now." The tone ended the discussion instantly. Russell disappeared down the hallway. I didn't know what Phoenix was. I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was Zoe. 5 minutes later, the entire house transformed. Black SUVs arrived from nowhere. Former military operators, cybersecurity specialists, investigators, people speaking into encrypted headsets, people who moved with purpose, with training, with experience. Apparently Phoenix wasn't a plan, it was a war room. Downstairs, giant screens flickered to life as emergency power systems came online. Maps appeared. Traffic cameras, satellite feeds, security footage. Every available resource focused on one thing: finding Zoe. A woman in tactical gear approached Camille. Vehicle identified. My head snapped up. What? She pointed at a monitor. Grainy traffic footage. A black van speeding away from the estate 15 minutes earlier. No plates. Stolen vehicle. Professional operation. Can you track it? Camille asked. The woman hesitated. For about 8 miles. Another pause. Then it disappears. Of course it did. These people planned everything. Then one of the analysts spoke up. We found something else. The room fell silent. A new image appeared on the screen. Security footage from a gas station 20 miles away. Timestamp, 40 minutes earlier. My blood turned to ice. Nathan Mercer. He stood beside the black van speaking to another man. A man I recognized instantly. Preston Vale. The room exploded. Analysts started shouting coordinates. Teams started moving. Phones started ringing. But I couldn't hear any of it, because all I could see was Preston's face, smiling, calm, relaxed. Like kidnapping a child was just another item on his schedule. Camille noticed my expression. Isaiah. I looked at her. If anything happens to her. My voice cracked. Completely. If anything happens to my little girl. I couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words. Camille stepped closer. Listen to me. Her voice was steady, unshakable. We're getting her back. Another pause. Do you understand? I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But I'd spent 9 years watching powerful people get away with everything. Then one of the analysts shouted, Wait. The room froze. What? Russell asked. The analyst enlarged the gas station image. Zooming. Enhancing. Focusing on something inside the van window. My heart stopped. Zoe. She was sitting inside. Alive. Frightened. But alive. Relief hit so hard, it almost knocked me over. Then the analyst enlarged the image further. Everyone went silent. Because Zoe wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't unconscious. She was holding something. A notebook, her notebook. The small blue notebook she used for school, and across the glass window, written in huge letters with a marker, were 3 words. Check. The driver. Silence. Complete silence. Russell stared at the screen. Camille stared at the screen. I stared at the screen. Then realization hit all of us simultaneously. Zoe was leaving a message. A clue. Somehow, while being kidnapped, my 11-year-old daughter was helping us. Russell zoomed in on the driver's reflection. Grainy. Distorted. Barely visible. Yet enough. Just enough. The room collectively stopped breathing. Because the driver wasn't Nathan Mercer. It wasn't Preston Vale. It wasn't anyone we'd been investigating. It was someone standing inside this house less than 3 hours ago. Someone who had access to security systems. Access to internal files. Access to Phoenix protocols. Someone Camille trusted completely. Russell slowly looked up. His face had gone pale. Oh my God. Camille turned toward him. What? Russell swallowed hard, then whispered the last name anyone expected to hear. Grant. Silence. What? Camille asked again. Russell looked sick, physically sick. The driver. Another pause. Is my brother. For a few seconds after Russell said the words, nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody seemed capable of processing what had just happened. His brother. The driver was his brother. The room full of analysts, investigators, and security specialists suddenly felt very small, very fragile, very vulnerable. Because the worst enemies aren't the ones outside your walls, they're the ones who already know where the doors are. Camille stared at Russell. Your brother is dead. Russell nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Silence. He died 6 years ago. Another pause. At least that's what the official report says. My stomach dropped. Of course it did. Every answer in this nightmare seemed to create 3 more questions. The analyst pulled up another image. Driver's license records. Employment files. Military history. The face on the screen matched the man in the van perfectly. Jacob Grant, former military intelligence. Cybersecurity specialist. Presumed deceased following a private helicopter crash in Alaska 6 years earlier. Presumed deceased. Those 2 words suddenly felt very important. Camille folded her arms. Tell me everything. Russell looked like someone had punched him in the chest. We weren't close. Another pause. Not after the military. He stared at the screen. Jacob got recruited into private security work. Another pause. Then one day his helicopter went down. Silence. No body recovered. My pulse accelerated. Because I'd heard this story before. Different names. Same pattern. Convenient deaths. Missing evidence. People disappearing exactly when it became useful. The analyst zoomed in on another frame from the gas station footage. Jacob stood beside the van talking to Preston Vale. Calm. Comfortable. Familiar. Not the interaction of strangers. The interaction of partners. Long-term partners. Camille noticed it too. How long? Russell frowned. What? How long has Preston known your brother? The room went quiet. Nobody had considered that question yet. Then another analyst spoke up. Maybe we can answer that. She typed rapidly. Financial databases, archived records, corporate filings, public contracts, thousands of documents flashing across screens. Then she stopped. Her face turned pale. Oh no. Camille looked over. What? The analyst enlarged a file. Corporate registration documents. 8 years old. Hidden shell company. Offshore ownership. Legal representation. My stomach twisted immediately. Because there it was. Preston Vale. Jacob Grant. And one more name. A name that froze the entire room. Monica Brooks. My ex-wife. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process. The screen blurred. Then sharpened again. Monica's signature appeared on corporate paperwork, dated 7 years earlier. 7 years. 2 years before my medical license was revoked. 2 years before our marriage started falling apart. 2 years before everything. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. No. Camille turned toward me. Slowly, carefully. Isaiah. I shook my head. No. Another pause. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible. It was sitting right there on the screen. Monica. My wife. The woman I'd trusted with everything. The woman who spent 9 years comforting me while I blamed myself. The woman who stood beside me every time another job application got rejected. The woman who cried with me after medical board hearings. The woman who told me none of it was my fault. My knees nearly gave out. Because suddenly a horrifying possibility appeared. What if she always knew? The room remained silent. Nobody wanted to say it. Nobody wanted to be the first person to turn suspicion into reality. Then Russell spoke. Quietly. The company received payments. Another pause. Large payments. He enlarged the records. Millions of dollars moving through shell corporations. Consulting fees. Legal retainers. Risk management contracts. Every trail eventually connected to Project Atlas. Everyone. My entire marriage flashed through my mind. Every conversation. Every argument. Every unexplained absence. Every moment I dismissed because I loved her. And for the first time, I wondered how much of it had been real. Then an alarm sounded. Loud. Sharp. Urgent. Everyone jumped. An analyst pointed toward the main display. Incoming transmission. The room froze. The screen flickered. Static. Distortion. Then an image appeared. Zoe. Alive. Sitting in a chair inside what looked like a warehouse. Relief hit first. Crushing relief. Then fear followed immediately. Because she wasn't alone, Preston Vale stepped into frame. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Perfect monster. Good evening, Camille. His voice echoed through the room. Calm. Casual. Like this was a business meeting instead of a kidnapping. Camille's expression hardened. Where is she? Preston ignored the question. I have to admit, You've exceeded expectations. He smiled slightly. Most people would have stopped after the apartment fire. My hands clenched automatically. Preston noticed. Dr. Brooks. Another smile. You look upset. I nearly launched myself through the screen. Camille stepped in front of me before I could move. Smart decision. Necessary decision, Preston continued. Let's save time. He gestured toward Zoe. Delete Atlas. Silence. Every file. Another pause. Every copy. Another pause. And the girl goes home. The room remained silent. Then Zoe did something nobody expected. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes. Preston stopped talking. The room froze. Zoe looked directly at the camera, then at Preston, then back at the camera. He's lying. Complete silence. Preston's smile vanished instantly. Zoe wasn't finished. Bad guys always lie. The analysts actually stopped typing. Russell looked stunned. Camille looked proud. I looked terrified. Preston slowly turned toward Zoe. Dangerous. Very dangerous. Careful. Zoe shrugged. You're not scary. Every adult in the room collectively lost 10 years of their life expectancy. Preston stared at her for several seconds, then smiled again. Worse this time. Colder. You remind me of your father. Zoe nodded. Good. The transmission cut out. Gone. Just like that. The room exploded. Analysts shouting. Teams moving. Coordinates being traced. Signals being tracked. But I barely heard any of it, because all I could think about was my daughter, alone, frightened, yet somehow still brave enough to stand up to a man who had burned down our home. Then another analyst shouted, Wait! Everyone turned. We got a location. Silence, heavy silence. The analyst swallowed. I know where they are. Camille stepped forward. Where? The analyst enlarged a satellite image. My blood turned to ice, because I recognized the building immediately. Meridian Medical Center, the hospital where Gerald Foss died, the hospital where my career ended, the hospital where this entire nightmare began. After 9 years, everything had come full circle, and somehow, I knew exactly what Preston was planning. He wasn't hiding there. He was waiting for us. The drive to Meridian Medical Center took 41 minutes. It felt like 4 years. Nobody talked much. There wasn't anything left to say. The convoy moved through the darkness with headlights off whenever possible. Black SUVs, tactical teams, emergency response specialists, people preparing for the possibility that a kidnapped child was being held by men desperate enough to burn buildings and destroy lives. Meanwhile, I sat in the back seat staring at the hospital growing larger on the horizon, Meridian. 9 years ago, I walked into that building believing I was saving lives. 9 years ago, I walked out believing I'd taken one. Tonight, I was returning for my daughter. Funny how life works. Camille sat beside me, silent, focused, determined. Finally she spoke. When we get Zoe back, I looked toward her. We finish this. Simple words. Yet they carried the weight of everything. Gerald Foss, the 11 transport victims, Project Atlas, my destroyed career, her dead son, 9 years of lies, all of it, yeah. Another pause. We finish it. Up front, Russell listened to updates through an encrypted headset. His expression grew darker with every report. What? Camille asked. Russell hesitated, then answered. The building isn't empty. My stomach tightened immediately. How many? At least 20. Another pause. Maybe more. Wonderful. Apparently Preston wasn't planning a negotiation. He was planning a fortress. The convoy stopped 2 blocks away. Everyone exited quickly, quietly. Professional, the abandoned hospital loomed over us like a ghost. Most of the windows were boarded up. The emergency entrance hung partially open. Wind rattled loose metal somewhere deep inside the structure. The place looked dead. But it wasn't. We knew better. Russell gathered everyone around a digital map. Thermal scans show activity on the 4th floor. He pointed toward a cluster of red markers. Multiple heat signatures. Another pause. One smaller signature. Zoe. My pulse accelerated immediately. She's alive? Russell nodded. Looks that way. Relief hit hard. then disappeared just as fast, because alive wasn't enough. Not yet. Camille looked toward the building. Let's move. The team split instantly, entry points secured, escape routes covered, communication channels established. Everyone had a job, everyone except me. Russell noticed immediately. You stay here. I laughed. Actually laughed. No. Isaiah, no. Another pause. My daughter is in there. Silence followed. Russell looked toward Camille. Camille looked toward me. Then she sighed. Stay close. Good enough. We entered through the emergency wing. Every step echoed. Every hallway felt haunted. Memories hit from every direction. Operating rooms, recovery areas, nurse stations, places I'd spent years working, places I'd spent years avoiding. 9 years vanished with every step. Then we reached the surgical floor, and everything stopped, because someone had turned the lights back on. Not all of them, just enough. Long hallways glowed faintly. Patient rooms stood open. Equipment sat exactly where it had been abandoned. It looked less like an empty hospital, and more like a stage. Prepared. Waiting. Russell noticed too. This is wrong. Very wrong. Preston wanted us here. That much was obvious. Then speakers crackled overhead. Static. Feedback. And finally a familiar voice. Welcome home, Dr. Brooks. Every muscle in my body tightened. Preston, I was wondering how long it would take. The voice echoed through the empty corridors. Calm, relaxed, amused. You always were predictable. Camille stepped forward. Where's Zoe? Silence. Then laughter. Straight to business. Another pause. 4th floor. East wing. Russell frowned immediately. Too easy. Much too easy, Preston continued. But before you go, a monitor mounted on the hallway wall suddenly flickered to life. Then another. Then another. Every screen in the corridor activated simultaneously. Security footage appeared. Old footage. 9 years old. My blood froze. Operating room 7. Gerald Foss's surgery. The night everything ended. The room went completely silent, because nobody had ever seen this footage. Not even me. Officially, the recording system failed that night. That's what the investigation claimed. Preston's voice returned. I think everyone deserves the truth. The video began playing. There I was, 9 years younger. Standing beside Gerald Foss, nurses moving around the room, monitors beeping steadily, everything normal. Then the door opened. Nathan Mercer entered. The room froze. Russell stared at the screen. Camille stared at the screen. I stared at the screen, because history was unfolding in front of us. Nathan approached the medication station, looked around, then removed something from his pocket. A syringe. Silence. Complete silence. The footage zoomed automatically. Someone had edited it, enhanced it, prepared it. Nathan injected something into Gerald's 4th line, then walked away. My knees nearly gave out. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. 9 years. 9 years of guilt. 9 years of shame. And there it was. Proof. Undeniable proof. Gerald Foss hadn't died because of my mistake. He had been murdered. The hallway exploded. People shouting. Teams moving. Radios crackling. But Preston wasn't finished. The footage changed. Another camera angle. Another recording. Another secret. This time the screen showed Monica, my wife, standing inside a conference room with Preston Vale, dated 8 years ago. 1 year after Gerald's death, 1 year before our marriage started falling apart, my heart stopped. Monica was crying. Preston handed her a document. She pushed it away. Then the audio activated. Crystal clear. I won't do this anymore. Monica's voice. Real. Emotional. Terrified. Preston smiled. You don't have a choice. Silence filled the hallway. Monica shook her head. Isaiah is innocent. My entire world shattered. Because suddenly, everything changed. Everything. Preston leaned forward in the recording. Then keep him distracted. Another pause. Or your daughter dies. The hallway went dead silent. Not one sound. Not one breath. Monica wasn't part of the conspiracy. She was a hostage. Just like me. Just like Zoe. Tears blurred my vision immediately. Because for 9 years I'd blamed her. Hated her. Resented her. and all along she'd been protecting our daughter. Then the hospital lights suddenly went out. Complete darkness. Gunshots echoed somewhere above us. 3 shots. Then screaming. Then silence. Russell grabbed his weapon. Move. Another 4th floor. East wing. Exactly where Zoe was. And for the first time that night, Preston Vale sounded scared. Very scared. His voice exploded through the speakers. Find her. Silence. Then another shout. Find her. Camille looked toward the stairwell. Then toward me. Her expression changed instantly. Realization. Fear. Hope. Isaiah. My heart stopped. What? Camille smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen all night. I don't think Zoe is waiting to be rescued anymore. The first thing I felt was confusion. The second was terror. Because Camille was smiling at a moment when nobody should have been smiling. Gunshots had just echoed through an abandoned hospital. My daughter was somewhere on the 4th floor. Men with weapons were searching for her. Nothing about the situation justified optimism. What are you talking about? I demanded. Another gunshot cracked through the darkness above us. Then a scream, not Zoe's, an adult, male. Russell was already moving toward the stairwell. Tactical teams followed immediately. Camille grabbed my arm before I could sprint after them. Think. Now isn't the time, think. Her voice cut through the panic. Hard. Sharp. Precise. What did she write on the van window? My mind raced. Then landed. Check the driver. Zoe's message. The clue that exposed Jacob Grant. Camille nodded. Exactly. Another pause. She isn't waiting for us to save her. My pulse hammered. She's leaving clues. Suddenly, everything shifted. Because Camille was right. Zoe had been helping us from the beginning. The notebook. The message on the glass. The observations. My daughter didn't freeze when she got scared. She paid attention. Just like her mother. Just like the detective novels she loved. Upstairs, another crash echoed through the hospital. Then shouting. Then running footsteps. Russell's voice crackled through a radio. Movement East Corridor. The tactical teams surged forward. We followed. 4 flights of stairs. Every step felt like an hour. The 4th floor smelled like dust, rust, and old memories. Emergency lights painted everything red. Hallways stretched endlessly into darkness. Somewhere ahead, people were running, fighting, searching. Then Russell appeared from a side corridor. His expression was somewhere between disbelief and admiration. You're not going to believe this. My heart nearly stopped. Zoe? Russell pointed ahead. Just come look. We rounded the corner, and there she was. My daughter stood in the middle of an abandoned nurse's station, holding a flashlight, completely unharmed, completely calm, and completely surrounded by unconscious kidnappers. I stared, then stared harder, because my brain refused to process what I was seeing. 3 grown men lay tied to hospital beds using electrical cords. One had a swollen nose. Another was handcuffed to a wheelchair. The third appeared to be trapped inside a supply closet. Zoe looked up. Oh good, like she'd been waiting for a ride home from soccer practice. Dad. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't function. Finally I managed. What happened? Zoe pointed down the hallway. They were dumb. Fair explanation. Not sufficient, but fair. Camille covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Russell wasn't even trying. Zoe. My voice sounded strangled. Why are there 3 unconscious men? She shrugged. They split up. Another shrug. Bad strategy. The tactical teams exchanged confused looks. One of them actually started taking notes. Then another voice echoed from deeper inside the hospital. Preston Vale. Angry. Panicked. Terrified. Find her. Zoe rolled her eyes. He's really loud. The entire hallway went silent, because somehow an 11-year-old girl had spent the last hour dismantling a kidnapping operation. Then Russell noticed something. Wait. He pointed toward the floor. Maps, hand-drawn maps, notes, timelines, directions. My stomach dropped. Zoe had mapped the entire floor. Every corridor, every exit, every guard position. You made reconnaissance notes? Russell asked. Zoe blinked. Obviously. The former military operators looked offended. Rightfully so. They'd spent 20 minutes planning an assault. Zoe had apparently spent 15 minutes planning a counter-offensive. Then a gunshot exploded nearby. Much closer this time. Everyone immediately reacted. Weapons up. Protective positions. Radios active. The mood changed instantly. Preston was still here, and he was losing control. That made him dangerous. Very dangerous. Russell pointed down the main corridor. Movement. A tactical team advanced, then stopped. Silence. Heavy silence. Finally a voice echoed through the darkness. Preston Vale. Camille. Another pause. Let's talk. Nobody moved. Nobody answered. Preston continued anyway. You already won. His voice sounded different now. Desperate. Fractured. Take the evidence. Another pause. Take the files. Another pause. Just let me leave. Camille laughed. Once. Coldly. No. The silence that followed felt enormous. Then Preston stepped into the corridor. Alone. Hands visible. Expensive suit covered in dust. The confident attorney from the courthouse was gone. This man looked hunted, cornered, finished. Yet his eyes remained dangerous. You don't understand. Camille folded her arms. Try me. Preston looked around slowly, then smiled. Not confidently, sadly. Atlas isn't mine. The hallway went completely silent. My blood turned cold, because somehow that possibility had never occurred to us. Preston continued. I didn't create it. Another pause. I protected it. Another pause. That's different. Camille's expression darkened. Who? Preston laughed. Broken laughter. Exhausted laughter. You really don't know? Nobody answered. Then Preston said 3 words that changed everything. 3 words nobody expected. 3 words that explained why he suddenly looked terrified instead of powerful. Check your board. Silence. Absolute silence. Camille didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe, because deep down, she already knew. Preston smiled weakly. Project Atlas was never run by lawyers. Another pause. Lawyers clean up messes. Another pause. Your board created it. The hallway exploded with shouting. Radios. Questions. Orders. Chaos. But I barely heard any of it, because Preston Vale was smiling again, not because he was winning, because he thought he was about to die. Then a red laser dot appeared on his chest. Tiny. Bright. Unmistakable. My blood froze instantly. Sniper. Preston saw it too. His smile vanished. No. The word barely escaped his mouth. A single shot echoed through the hospital, and Preston Vale collapsed. The gunshot echoed through the hospital corridor like a thunderclap. Then everything stopped. For one impossible second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. Preston Vale staggered backward. Blood appeared across his shoulder. Not his chest. The sniper had missed the kill shot by inches. Or maybe they hadn't missed at all. Preston crashed into the wall and slid to the floor. Instantly the hallway exploded into chaos. Tactical teams surged forward. Radios screamed. Operators searched windows and rooftops. Russell grabbed Zoe and pulled her behind cover before I could even react. Camille never took her eyes off Preston. Keep him alive, she shouted, because suddenly Preston wasn't just a criminal. He was the only witness capable of naming the people truly responsible. Somewhere outside, the sniper fired again. The round shattered a window at the far end of the corridor. Glass rained across the floor. The shooter wasn't trying to escape. The shooter was trying to finish the job. Russell's team moved immediately. Half the operators raced toward the roof access points. The others formed a perimeter around Preston. Blood spread across his expensive suit. He laughed weakly. Actual laughter. Told you. Camille crouched beside him. Who? Preston winced. Too late. Another cough. They're already moving. I stepped closer. Who created Atlas? Preston looked directly at me. For the first time in 9 years, there was no arrogance in his eyes. No manipulation. No performance. Just fear. Genuine fear. Board chairman. Silence. Arthur Sinclair. The name hit Camille like a physical blow. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Arthur Sinclair. Chairman of Sterling Medical Group's board. Mentor. Investor. Friend. The man who helped finance her first hospital acquisition. The man who attended Andrew's funeral. the man she trusted more than anyone in corporate America. Preston saw the realization land. He built Atlas. Another pause. 20 years ago. Another cough. Insurance companies, hospital systems, pharmaceutical investors. The hallway went silent, because suddenly the conspiracy wasn't a conspiracy anymore. It was an industry. Preston smiled bitterly. You thought this was about one hospital? Another pause. One company? He shook his head slowly. Atlas is everywhere. My stomach turned, because if he was telling the truth, 11 deaths weren't the whole story. Gerald Foss wasn't the whole story. There could be hundreds, thousands. Preston looked toward Zoe standing behind Russell. Then, surprisingly, his expression softened. You're brave, kid, Zoe frowned. You're still a bad guy. The entire corridor froze. Then, somehow, even Preston laughed. Fair. 30 minutes later, federal agents arrived. Then more. Then more. Apparently, Sterling Medical Group wasn't the only organization investigating Atlas. They had been building cases for years. Missing pieces, missing witnesses, missing evidence. And tonight, everything finally connected. The files from the cloud account, the surveillance recordings, the altered medical records, the financial transfers, the kidnapping, the apartment fire, all of it. By dawn, arrest warrants were being issued across 3 states. By noon, Arthur Sinclair was on every news network in America. By evening, Project Atlas had become the largest healthcare corruption scandal in modern history. But none of that mattered to me. Not yet. Because while television stations chased executives and federal prosecutors chased board members, I was sitting beside my daughter in a quiet hospital room. Ironically, the same hospital where everything began. Zoe sat cross-legged on the bed eating terrible vending machine cookies. So, she said, am I grounded? I stared at her. For what? She looked genuinely confused. Escaping kidnappers. Fair question. Very fair question. I rubbed my face. We'll discuss it later. Zoe nodded. That's usually bad. Smart kid. Across the room, Camille laughed softly. The first real laugh she'd managed in hours. Maybe days. Maybe years. The exhaustion in her face was obvious. But something else was there too. Relief. The kind people feel after carrying a weight for far too long. Then the door opened. A federal prosecutor entered carrying a folder. Dr. Brooks. I looked up. Yeah? He smiled. The medical board voted unanimously. My heart stopped. What? He handed me the paperwork. Official. Signed. Sealed. Real. Your license has been fully restored. Silence. Complete silence. 9 years. 9 years of waiting. 9 years of wondering. 9 years of believing that part of my life was gone forever. Gone in a single sentence. Zoe immediately grabbed the paperwork. Does that mean you're a doctor again? I couldn't answer. My throat had completely stopped working. So Camille answered for me. Yes. Zoe grinned. Cool. Then another pause. Can we still ride helicopters? Somehow that broke everyone. Laughter, real laughter, the kind that arrives after surviving something terrible. 6 months later, the first criminal trials began. Arthur Sinclair was convicted. So were dozens of executives, consultants, and administrators tied to Atlas. Nathan Mercer cooperated with prosecutors and revealed details that helped identify hundreds of manipulated cases. Families finally received answers. Not perfect justice. There is no such thing, but answers. Sometimes that's the closest thing available. My medical license returned. Eventually my career did too. Slowly, carefully, one patient at a time. Trust takes years to rebuild. I understood that. Monica and I never got back together. Some damage runs too deep. Some stories aren't meant to end that way. But we learned how to forgive each other. More importantly, we learned how to be parents together again. Zoe deserved that. She deserved a future free from old wounds. As for Camille Sterling, she dismantled half her own company to make sure Atlas could never happen again. Hospitals changed. Oversight changed. Systems changed. Not because corporations suddenly became noble, because people finally saw what happened when nobody was watching. 1 year later, I stood outside a new pediatric medical center bearing a simple name, the Andrew Sterling Children's Institute. Zoe stood beside me. Camille stood beside me. Hundreds of families filled the courtyard. Children laughed. Parents smiled. Life moved forward. Before the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Zoe slipped her hand into mine. "Dad?" "Yeah?" She smiled. "We're okay, right?" The same question. The one she'd asked on the courthouse steps. The one she'd asked when everything fell apart. This time the answer came easily. "Yeah." I looked at the families surrounding us. The children running across the lawn. The building built in honor of a boy who never got the chance to grow up. "We're more than okay." Zoe nodded thoughtfully, then grinned. "Good." The ribbon fell. The crowd cheered. And for the first time in nearly a decade, the weight I'd been carrying finally disappeared. Not because the past changed. Not because justice fixed everything, but because the truth finally had a chance to breathe. And sometimes, after years of darkness, that's enough. The end.